Welcome to your year-end checklist, because who doesn't love a checklist? We're human beings. We like to have people point out what are the top 10 things we need to do to close out the year. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. So this is our top 10 estate planning, really life planning things to do now that it's November as we head into the last 2 months of the year. So my name's Kevin Snyder. I'm an estate planning elder law attorney. Many of you know me. And today we're going to be talking about those things in the next 8 weeks that you can do close out the year strong. So I'm going to run through this list a little bit quickly. First, we'll get the run out of the top 10, and then I'll go into them in a little bit more detail. So here are my top 10. Number one, make sure that your finances are organized and that your trust is funded correctly. That's number one. And no matter if you already completed your trust planning years ago, especially if you've done it years ago, it's a great opportunity to make sure that everything is cleaned up. Those of you know my wagon analogy, that is important there. Number two, make sure that people know where to find your estate planning documents. Number three, have family conversations or revisit family conversations regarding your estate planning. Number four, make sure that you update your planning to reflect any sort of change in personnel. Number five, consider other people in your family that you might need to plan for, whether that's children, whether that's young adults, whether that's aging parents. Number six, for those of you that are 64 years of age and older, it's time to look at Medicare planning. Are you in the right Medicare supplement plan going forward? Do you need to be on Medicare? Number seven, making sure that you're doing an insurance audit from insurances across the board, life insurance to property and casualty insurance to disability insurance. Number eight, making sure you're doing your financial and tax planning before the end of the year. Number nine, looking at gifting strategies both for the end of this year and looking forward for the next 3 years. And number 10, making sure that you have looked at your end of life planning, whether that's through an advanced healthcare directive and or it's also in regards to planning out any funerals or memorial services. So there you have it. Those are the top 10 things that we are guiding our clients to look at as the year closes out, and I'm talking to you about today. So let's go back over that list and dive a little bit deeper for you. So I said first, get yourself organized, making sure that you have your assets organized, your financial documents, some basic things. So you've acquired things during the year, making sure that at the very least that's in a folder for you because you're going to need that for tax preparation, right? So that's helpful. The other helpful aspect of it is making sure that anything that you newly acquired was properly placed in a trust or one of the trusts that you may have. Particularly if you had done a refinance in the last year, earlier in the year when the rates were better, you might want to make sure, you will want to make sure that your home is still titled correctly in the trust, because a number of mortgage lenders in the process will remove it from the trust in order to fund the refinance loan, and then by mistake or omission or part of the lack of service has not put that back into your trust. So you want to make sure that you know how your trust is organized. I use the example of a wagon for all of my clients, making sure your wagon's organized and neat and tidy. Because if you're just throwing stuff in the wagon, that wagon hits a bump as you wheel it through your life, this stuff's going to come out the wagon. So we want to make sure everything is integrated and fits nicely in the wagon. And that comes down to making sure that you have the right paperwork. And lastly, for people, spouses have different roles in their marriages, right? There's one spouse might take on the challenge or the responsibility of doing all of the financial or tax preparations and handling the money. So does the other spouse know where to find information? Do they know where what accounts exist? Do they know where the paperwork is? Do they know the professionals that are associated with those things, like the life insurance agents and companies, to the financial advisor? Do they know the passwords of how to sign in to accounts online? So you want to make sure that your spouse knows where or your significant other knows where all this information is and can access it in the event of a crisis or emergency. That's getting yourself organized. And of course, Sometimes when we do that, we find little things that we thought were done that weren't done. Oh, we thought that our significant another knew that we had those accounts or knew how to access them. We thought that the house was in the trust. We thought that we had designated beneficiaries properly. It's a great time to kind of review all that, making sure that it's in the right spot. Now, make sure that people know where your important financial and estate planning documents are outside of your spouse or a significant other. For those of you that have adult children or people that have designated other people to be the successor trustees of their trust, do those individuals know where you keep your estate planning documents? Do they have a copy of the important documents? Do they know who your attorneys are? You're going to want to make sure that those dots are connected, because in a crisis or after your death, you want to streamline the communication and availability of information. Oftentimes, we find that some of the delays and challenges have to do with the fact that successor trustees have no idea where the legal documents are. They don't know who drafted them. They don't know the attorneys. They don't know what's in the trust, or they're having challenges accessing the information. So we want to streamline that. So you want to make sure that you tell people where you kept things, because maybe you have in the past, but you've changed. Now you moved the location of things, or you changed attorneys, and so on and so forth. You want to make sure that you're revisiting and that they're aware, and not just assume like, oh, we told them that in the past, that those people actually remember, right? And down to making sure that they have access to things, because, for example, my mom used to say to us kids, particularly me, when they were going away, and a few times that they went away, and we were the babysitter for an overnight, they'd say, well, everything you need to know is in the safe, in the closet. Well, that was great information. So I knew that if anything, God forbid, happened to my parents, that we could just go to the safe. The challenge was, of course, she didn't tell me where the key to the safe was. Well, so you want to make sure that when you're giving people information, it's up-to-date information and it's quality information. All right, so that's the first two. Now we're going to talk about three: revisiting family conversations, or even having family conversations. This is super important because communication and transparency are the two most important things that dissolve any potential or possible potential for litigation in the future. I often have people come to me and say, we want to build a trust that makes it 100% impossible for there to be any challenges, because we hear about all these trusts and arguments, and we have neighbors that are going through court, and we just want to avoid all that. Can we build a trust that creates 100% certainty of no litigation? And of course, the answer is no. You can't do that, because you're dealing with humans. And so, yes, we can develop a trust that stays out of probate, but it requires you to make sure that you keep assets in the trust to avoid probate. We can talk about how we can best structure a trust so that the inheritance is given in a way that is most appropriate and doesn't cause any inequities across the board, whether it's inequities of dollars, whether it's inequities of power, things like that. But at the end of the day, it's real people that are left behind. So if you're not talking about your planning with your adult children, particularly if you have blended families, or you're not talking about it with your spouse, if you have separate trusts, that's what creates challenges later, because people are in the dark, and all of a sudden now they're not in the dark, but you're not around to explain why it is that you did something, or maybe interpret something, or realize that how you planned was based on an assumption. And now that you've heard from your adult child about what they really want, or what they really want for you, or the fact that they wouldn't want to be a trustee, that's all important information for you to consider. And particularly those of us that have aging parents, because that generation doesn't really like to talk about themselves or any of the planning. They're very private. We've seen in our practice a lot of challenges when those parents become incapacitated and they don't have any planning, or they've died and they don't have any planning, or they have outdated planning. So you want to have those conversations as early as possible. And since we're getting together for the holidays, it's a good reminder, over Thanksgiving dinner, Christmas dinner, holidays, it might not be the best time to have those conversations, but it's at least a great time to remind us that we should have those conversations, and maybe just talk to our loved ones and say, hey, well, I want to have a conversation with you soon after the holidays. Let's enjoy our time together, but there are some things that I'd like to talk to you about. If there are any changes that you've had in mind, now's a great time to kind of brainstorm and get that together, because over the year you might have said, well, I want to do this, or I'm not sure about that person being a successor trustee, or I want to, I have grandkids now, they were born and I want to incorporate them, or I've had children that were born and I want to incorporate them. What sort of changes are necessary in your planning due to the life events that happened this year in 2022? So why don't we put those all together, get a better sense of what that is, so that your planning can be updated. And along with those lines, other changes that might have happened with your assets. You want to make sure that the schedules are updated, making sure that assets that no longer needed to be listed in your trust are gone from that. For those of you that are 64 and older, it's a good time of year to be talking about Medicare planning. We just had open enrollment. If you're 64, next year when your 65th birthday, you're going to likely be signing up for Medicare. But not necessarily. If you're still working, of course, and you have health insurance, or you have a spouse that's still working and has health insurance, you may not need or want to sign up for any Medicare insurance. If you're a veteran, you might not need to sign up for any Medicare insurance. But if you are signing up for Medicare insurance, what plan is going to work for you? You're getting inundated with that information, both, I'm sure, in emails, robocalls, mailers, and it's all coming at you. So what is the best plan? You talk to friends, family, everyone has their unique perspective, of course, unique to them. It's a good time to talk to a Medicare specialist to make sure that you're in the right plan, and to do that annually, because these plans change. It's healthcare. They change every year. So you might not work for you last year, might not work for you this year. So looking at your Medicare, and if you're not a Medicare, just your healthcare, just in general, would it be advantageous for you to have a health savings account in addition to having a better health insurance? So there's some tax advantages to that. So you're going to want to look at things like that. Doing an insurance audit. So now we're down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We're in insurance audit. I get asked all the time, how much life insurance should I have? Well, that's a great question. So you're going to want to have a conversation with your attorney, maybe your life insurance agent, to really discuss whether or not you are funded. Unfortunately, just anecdotally, I don't have a percentage here. A number of people that I end up talking to on a weekly basis are underfunded when it comes to life insurance. So you want to have that conversation to make sure that you have a large enough policy to accomplish the goals that you want in the event of your death. So you can say, I want this, I want that result. I want the kids to be able to go to college. I want my spouse to be able to pay off the mortgage. I want to make sure that so-and-so gets the vacation home, whatever it is. Just saying that and putting that in your trust or your will is one thing. That avoids confusion on your intent, but doesn't mean it's going to happen, because there's money on the table. So we want to make sure that your trust, your estate, is infused with enough capital to make these events occur. Otherwise, it's going to be hamstrung because you lack finances. So you need to have those conversations. Making sure you understand the different policies that are out there. What's the difference between a term life insurance and a whole life insurance? What's universal life? Making sure you understand how to incorporate all of that. Should you get life insurance on your children? There's a good conversation to be had there. So life insurance audits is a great time to get audited, meaning do a review, get some expert help. If you're clients of ours, that we're happy to do that. If you're in our client care membership program, to make sure you go through that life insurance audit. Now, there's all sorts of insurance, so it's just not life insurance. We have disability insurance. We have long-term care insurance. You have your property and casualty insurance to protect against liabilities. Certainly, if you're a business owner, you understand these other liability insurance coverages that you might have, from general liability to, if you're a professional, you have your errors and omissions insurance, attorneys and malpractice insurance. It's basically E&O. So all these other types of insurances, are you insured enough for the other situations, the other life curveballs? What if you can't work because of a car accident? Well, how is your family going to get money to put food on the table, to pay the bills? What sort of disability insurance? And do you know when that disability insurance is going to kick in? Oftentimes it doesn't kick in for 90 days. So what are you going to do in the meantime? So how are bills going to get paid? And what if you can never work again? Is there a limit to the disability insurance that you have? Is there something that's going to sustain yourself for the rest of your life? So, particularly if you have a business now, if you can't operate the business any longer because of your disability, what does that look like? And so these are things that you need to be asking yourself and get help with an expert to go through. And long-term care insurance. What are the costs of long-term care right now today in 2022 going into 2023? What's the cost of in-home care? What's the cost of assisted living? What's the cost of nursing home care? What's the likelihood for you? What's the likelihood for your parents? How are those costs going to get paid? Little spoiler alert, Medicare is not going to cover it. So how is that going to be paid for? And are you eligible for a long-term care policy? It's a great opportunity to talk to a long-term care specialist. If you need a referral, we got some great ones in our network. So that's your insurance audit. I think we're on number 7 now. Who else in your family, in your network, in your close circle needs planning? Who matters most to you? Do you have young children still? Is there some planning that you need to do there, looking at their guardians? Are they still appropriate? Or has relationships changed? People moved? Do things no longer make sense? Other people have gotten older. Do we need to reshuffle the deck when it comes to your guardians? And then when it comes to young adults, those that have turned 18 now, they're adults. And how can you as a parent continue to protect them? They would be beneficial for them to have a young adult emergency plan, some basic planning that allows you, the parent, to be able to continue to be their legal advocate should they need it in an emergency or crisis. And so you're not blocked out by privacy laws, whether it's healthcare privacy laws, data privacy laws, or it's educational privacy laws. And you're not having to go to court in order to be a parent. And thirdly, what about our aging parents? What sort of help do they need? If they no longer qualify for a long-term care insurance policy, can they be qualified for Medi-Cal? Can they be qualified for aid and attendance through the Department of Veteran Affairs if they're a veteran or a surviving spouse of a veteran? What are some other income streams and strategies that we can employ to make sure that mom and dad, or mom or dad, are getting the quality care that they certainly deserve, and we're not compromising our relationships with them or assuming a lot of the cost as well. So we can keep the family intact, get mom and dad the care that they need, and it can be afforded. And so what kind of planning? And do they have their planning in place in general so that should things happen to them, it doesn't create a mess or a headache for the family? Everyone understands their roles. Everyone knows what mom and dad's wishes are. And it's all very clear. 8 is to talk about your end of the year financial and tax planning strategies, of course, as we come out to the end of the year, making sure that we're carrying out whatever plan from last year on the financial savings side. The market has been a little bit of a mess this year, making sure you're talking to your financial advisor. If you don't have one, maybe the goal is to now get one, to get connected with one. Talking with your accountant now that they're done with tax preparation season. They have a little bit of a break before they go into tax season for next year. Now would be a great time to have these strategic conversations with them regarding some tax planning strategies, especially looking forward ahead in 3 years. We know that there's going to be a sunset in the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act that says that the lifetime gift exemptions and estate exemptions are very high, $12.06 million per person, and which will again be adjusted for inflation for next year. So it'll be a little bit higher. And we know that what that means is that you can gift during your life or give during your death any assets up to $12.06 million without having a gift tax. Now, that's going to change in January 1st, 2026. The level is going to be cut in half. And so you're going to lose half of your gifting power in life and half of your gifting power tax-free in death. So what does that look like in regards to our planning now? Some things that we might want to take advantage of in order to avoid that sunset. And we also want to look at some charitable tax giving opportunities as well. As we close out the year, some of these gifts need to be made before Jan 1 of 2023, or said differently, by December 31st of this year. We have to make these charitable gifts. They might have some benefit to you on your income taxes. So, for example, if you can take out of your IRA tax-free, make a charitable donation up to $100,000, and not only are you making that tax-free, It counts towards your RMD for the year if you haven't already taken your RMD. And then you also get a line item deduction dollar for dollar on your tax return. So it will lower your income tax, provide you a tax break. So great opportunity to make these gifts before the end of the year, particularly if you're businesses or just personal and you want to get, and you're doing line item deductions. It's a great opportunity for you to utilize that to save on taxes. So meet with your accountants and have these tax strategy plannings so that you, if you're charitable minded, you can make these really great gifts before the end of the year. And if you're grandparents, you can think about and enact on establishing some 529 savings plan gifting right into a 529 savings plan. So you're saving for the education of your grandchildren. There's a lot of great, unique little tax strategies, financial strategies there that would be beneficial for you and your grandchild. So you're going to want to talk to your financial advisor and tax advisor about that. And lastly, number 10 is getting some clarity on your end of life decisions. If you're work with us and you're our clients and you've already gone through this process of deciding whether you want what you want at your end of life decisions in regards to, you created an advanced healthcare directive. We've had this conversation. We've gone through different options, scenarios. You've made elections. You've written express directions. Some of you more detailed than others. And now is a great time for you, before the end of the year, just to take a look and say, number one, I remember what I put there. It's so easy to forget. And has my decisions around these issues changed? If so, then how do I want to change them? What kind of direction do I want to get? If I was general in my instructions, do I now want to be more specific? Because I've gotten older, I've seen how things play out for some people, or I've had personal experiences that make me change my perspective on these types of situations and issues. And so how do I want to tailor that in my directive? That'd be a great time for us to talk about that, right? Or any attorney that you might be using. To the point of, okay, let's move beyond the end of life crisis scenarios. You're in the hospital and the doctors are needing to know whether to withdraw you from life support or whether you're an organ donor and things like that, to, all right, well, these are my wishes after I've died. After you've died, what's the first thing your family's going to do? They're going to try to figure out and arrange and organize a service for you, whether that's a funeral, a memorial service, a party, a celebration of life. That's what we as humans do. So is that something that you've wanted? Did you indicate what your wishes are? Have you written that down on paper in detail? What's the other thing? Well, someone's going to put an obituary in the paper. That's just kind of the process of what we do, the little checklist of things that we do when someone passes away, if a loved one. Is that something that you want to have involvement in? Do you want to help prepare that from a standpoint of, you want to make sure the information is correct, to, hey, you just want to make it easier for your family. So you've arranged for your funeral services to be taken care of. You pre-purchased those, you plan those out, the obituary is written, everything is super easy, so that when you pass away, it's just like this playbook that gets passed over. And it's not just your trust, but this playbook over the services is all done. And so now it just gets enacted down to, you've prepaid for cremation services, or you prepaid for a burial in the cemetery. So that's already acknowledged. And so that makes it really easy and a nice gift for your family in that time of grief. So that's what we're doing that for. Oftentimes we meet with clients and they say, well, why am I going to care? I'll have died. And so why am I going to care? I don't really have an opinion. That's true. But the planning that you're doing is because you have an opinion of how you want your family to be cared for. You want to make things easy for your family. And here's a great way to make it easy. So yes, it's a difficult conversation to sit down and talk about our mortality, talk about our own funerals, write our own obituaries. That's tough. Absolutely. The saving grace, though, is the peace of mind that you're giving, the gift you're giving to your family, that they're not going to have to be stressed out and worried about doing this whole event plan while they're sad that you've passed away. And so you've taken that burden, you made that gift, particularly and when it comes down to finances. I mean, funerals can be really expensive. You've paid for that. You've taken that off of their to-do list, off of their lap. And when people say, I don't want to be a burden to my family in life or in death, well, now you've taken that burden off of them in your death. So all good things to consider closing out the year. So those are the top 10 for the year. A lot of good stuff there. Don't worry if you can't get it all done, right? Focus on the most important of that top 10, hone in, pick three, and attack those three. And when you get done with those three, pick the next three. And there you go. Pretty soon, you're going to get through that list, not a problem. Don't be overwhelmed by it. Don't sit back and say, I'll just do it next year, because then we'll be having this conversation a year from now. So pick three things of the things I talked about, focusing on them. If you need some help, we're here for you. But please utilize some professionals that help you get it done. If anything, they're accountability partners for you. They're going to help you move the ball, because or else you would have already got all this stuff done. We're humans. We need help. Find your who, get it done, and have a really great next 2 months. Enjoy the holiday season. And Happy New Year to everybody. Again, my name's Kevin Snyder. I'm an estate planning and elder law attorney in Irvine. My firm's Snyder Law, and we love helping people to move the ball forward, to protect those that matter most to them from the curveballs of life. And if you need that help, happy to help you. All right, until then, be amazing.